You know, who would win in a global turf war? The Italian Mafia, the Yakuza, maybe the Triads, or the Mexican cartels? It's the kind of question that just fills up internet forums, and let's be honest, it fuels blockbuster movies. We all picture these epic battles between iconic crime syndicates. But what if that entire picture is just plain wrong? Because the data tells a story that's way more surprising and, frankly, a lot more troubling.
Yeah, you see this kind of thing all the time. When people think about organized crime, their minds immediately go to the cartels. I mean, we see the headlines, right? The military-grade weapons, the sheer scale of the violence. And for a lot of people like this Reddit user here, it feels like an open and shut case. The cartels are they're on a completely different level.
But what if comparing crime families is kind of like arguing about which dinosaur was the toughest? You know, it's a fun debate for sure, but it completely misses the bigger picture of what's actually happening on the planet today. What if the most powerful criminal players aren't the ones we see in the movies at all?
So to get to the truth, we got to move past all the pop culture showdowns and actually look at the data. And believe it or not, there is a massive data-driven effort to do exactly that, to actually measure and rank organized crime across the entire globe. The main source we're going to be digging into is something called the Global Organized Crime Index. Think of it like a census for the entire criminal underworld. It's this huge project that pulls in data from hundreds of experts to score every single UN member state on two key metrics. And this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Okay, so the index looks at two sides of the same coin. On one side, you have criminality. That's basically the scale of a country's illegal markets and just how powerful its criminal groups are. But on the other side, you have resilience. And that's all about how well a country can fight back, using its laws, its police, its whole society. Understanding this balance, the problem versus the response, that is the key to everything.
So, using this whole framework, the index can tell us who the most dominant criminal actors really are on a global scale. And let me tell you, the #1 spot does not go to the cartels or the mafia. Nope, not even close.
This data right here, it just completely flips the script. Look at that tallest bar. The most powerful type of criminal actor in the world isn't a mafia boss or a cartel leader. It's what the index calls state-embedded actors. We're talking corrupt officials, politicians, police, people who use the power of the government itself to commit and enable crime.
And the index itself says it in black and white, state officials are the most dominant brokers of organized crime. So what this means is that the biggest threat isn't always some outside group fighting against the state. A lot of the time, it's a corrupt element working from the inside, using the state's own power to make crime happen.
That is a huge revelation. And, it leads to another question. If our idea of the kingpins is totally wrong, what about their businesses? I mean, we all tend to think of drugs as the biggest game in town, right? Cocaine, heroin. That's where the real money is. Well, the data has another little surprise for us.
Yeah, according to the index, when you look at which criminal market is the most widespread, the one affecting the most countries all over the globe, it isn't the drug trade. It's the exploitation of people. Human trafficking is the single most pervasive criminal economy in the entire world. And that's just a grim, sobering reality. The dehumanizing trade in people is organized crime's most widespread and devastating product.
So we know it's often state actors running the show, and their most widespread business is human trafficking. But where on the planet is the problem of organized crime just as a whole, the absolute worst? Let's take a look at the global scorecard, continent by continent.
Okay, so the index gives us these criminality scores for each continent, and the results are pretty revealing. Down at the bottom of the list, we have Oceania with a score of 3.07. Then comes Europe at 4.48. Now this might be a surprise to you, but the Americas, they're not at the top. They score a 5.06. Just above that, you've got Africa at 5.17, which leaves the continent with the highest overall criminality score
is Asia with a score of 5.30. Yep, despite the really intense focus on cartels in the Americas, the data shows that, as a continent, Asia faces the most severe and widespread organized crime problem in the world.
And it's not just one type of crime either. In Asia, the illicit economies are incredibly diverse. I mean, alongside human trafficking and synthetic drugs, you've got these massive environmental crimes. We're talking illegal logging, illicit fishing that are a huge part of the problem, just devastating ecosystems and local economies. It's a very, very different picture of organized crime than the one we usually see. Okay, so the top criminals aren't who we think. Their biggest business isn't what we think, and the global hotspot isn't where we think. This brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial takeaway from all this. The data shows us that the real fight against organized crime, it's not what we see in the movies.
Remember those two scores we talked about, criminality and resilience? You might assume that countries with really high crime would have really low resilience, right? That they're just failing? But it's not that simple. The index shows that a country can have a massive crime problem and a powerful, sophisticated response to it, all at the same time.
Just take a look at this list of countries that fall into that high criminality, high resilience category. You've got the United States, Colombia, Italy, France and Spain and Europe, and regional powerhouses like Nigeria and South Africa. These are not failed states. These are powerful nations that are fighting a huge battle against organized crime right within their own borders. They have a big problem, but they also have a big toolkit to fight it.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, that epic four-way battle royale for control of the criminal underworld. After everything we've just seen in the data, who wins?
And the answer is, we've been asking the wrong question the whole time. The data from the Global Organized Crime Index gives us a completely new way to see the problem, a way that's much, much closer to the truth.
See, the real battle isn't about which gang has the coolest name or the biggest guns. It's not some kind of criminal World Cup. That whole narrative just distracts us from the true nature of the fight.
The real war is the constant, grinding struggle between criminality and resilience. And it's a battle that's being fought inside every single country, including our own. It's a fight between corruption and accountability, between exploitation and protection. It's a fight between those in power who enable crime and those in government and in our communities who work to build resilience against it. And that is a war where we all have a stake in the outcome.